Hi, I'm Mario Arias with Utmost Performance Coaching, coming to you live from the campus of my new gig here at Midwestern State University. What I wanted to talk to you today about was recovery, and I wanted to start by giving you an example. We all probably have smartphones, and if you didn't know this about smartphones, I'm gonna educate you on something. Did you know that per the manufacturer of whatever phone that you have, because all of them pretty much use lithium-ion batteries, did you know that your phone, the way that you're supposed to use your phone is you're supposed to let your phone come down in charge all the way until it's almost empty before you decide to plug your phone in and charge it back up again to full, and then just repeat that process over and over again. So your phone starts at 100% charged, and then you allow it to get down to probably less than 10%, and then you plug it in, and then you begin the charging process over again. Now, I know that many of us don't do that. Did you know that if you do what many of us, myself included, have done, where you start the battery at 100, and then you know you've got a long day ahead of you, so once it gets down to maybe 50 or 40%, you decide you're gonna plug it into the wall, and you decide you're gonna let it come back up to maybe 70%, because maybe you were in your car or you had a couple of minutes to be able to charge it. And so now it didn't go to 100 and it didn't go below 10, but it's up to 70 again. And now we kind of run it down, and maybe before you go to bed, it's only at 30. So you go ahead and plug it in. And then obviously when you wake up that next day, hopefully because you're sleeping enough, you're getting enough recovery, stay tuned, then your battery's back up to 100 and you're good to go. But what you've noticed, or maybe if you've noticed this or haven't noticed this, is the reason why the manufacturers of those phones tell you to go from full battery, let it run down really low, and then charge it over again is because that is going to help your battery last longer in your phone. And unfortunately, we all know this too, that as phones get older, if we haven't done a good job doing this, you know that, oh my gosh, my phone is not lasting hardly any time at all. That battery is draining really, really fast. And then we really get into that cycle of plugging it in, trying to get 10% more in the battery because I know it's not gonna last very long, and then charging it up a little bit, and then just doing this over and over again until, again, unfortunately, a lot of unfortunate things with phones because they're expensive. It's time to turn that one in, and it's time to get a new phone with a better battery that holds more charge. And so I wanted to use that example because that's going to be the backdrop from which I'm going to talk about the process of recovery. I'm going to talk about how when you're on the bike, when you're training, when you're racing, even when you're just doing life, you must pay attention to recovery, essentially to two components really, to your readiness to work and your readiness to recover, and looking at both of those things. We've got rhythms in place on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly and a yearly basis. We've got these rhythms that we get into where we've got this readiness to work at times, and then we've got these other times where we have this readiness to recover, and that's what we should be doing. And so as an athlete, or more importantly, your coach, should be taking these two things into account and be paying special attention to these things, because if we get this wrong, this is where we begin doing the phone gets down to 60%, then I charge it up to 80%, then I let it get down to 12%, then I charge it, and all of a sudden that battery, our bodies, our performance, our metrics, however it is you want to quantify it, it begins to take a hit. And ultimately, yes, performance is going to be able to take a hit. And so we want to make sure that we safeguard against that. So I'm going to go through 4 areas of recovery, kind of highlight 4 rhythms that we have throughout a day, a week, a month, a year, and how we should be paying attention to those. So the first one is kind of a daily rhythm that we have. It's called the basic rest activity rhythm. And what that basically means is in a 24-hour period, we have times where, and I'm sorry, let me back up a half step. I'm going to talk about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. I'm going to talk about both of these systems. Essentially, they're way more complicated than I'm going to put out here, but basically just know your parasympathetic nervous system is the one that wants you to recover. It's the one that, kind of to give you the best example, it's the one that's working really hard when you're sleeping, which is when your body's rebuilding things, it's allowing you to rest and recovery. So that's parasympathetic. Your sympathetic nervous system is the one with the fight or flight response, if you've ever heard of that. It's the one that allows you to be able to work, to be able to build muscle, to be able to grow, to be able to make training adaptations. So I'm gonna talk about both of those, okay? Now, when we get into the basic rest activity rhythm, and it's a 24-hour period, you've probably felt this before. Have you ever felt like you're on it, you're at work, you're really creative, you're pumping out projects, you're putting together spreadsheets, you're doing whatever it is your job entails for you to do, or you've picked certain times to train during the day and you've noticed, man, I'm more alert, I'm more awake during those times, and then all of a sudden, I feel this crash, I feel this lack of energy, I feel lethargic, I feel like, guess what? My parasympathetic nervous system is kind of starting to say, hey, we need you to recover. We need you to back off of the work that you're doing, be it on the bike, be it in your professional life, be it students here at school, on campus, whatever it happens to be, and really paying attention to those. So one of the things I want to talk about is, since we're here on a collegiate campus, I'll talk about the all-nighter. I'll talk about the student that says, I've got final exams, I'm going to go into the library, I'm going to lock myself in there, and I'm just going to study all night long. Well, what that student is doing is they're running the stop sign on that time when that parasympathetic nervous system is saying, hey, can you relax for a second? So they're doing all this work, they're hitting the books, they're reading their notes, they're reading the material, they're trying to memorize things, but because they don't choose to listen to the parasympathetic nervous system, go outside, take a walk, take a nap, watch a funny video, just disconnect from the work and play for a second and rest. Because they're not doing that, all of a sudden, a lot of these students, what they'll say is they got in front of their final exam and they couldn't remember anything that they had studied the previous night. Now, I know some of it may be sleep deprivation, but some of it is also not listening to this rhythm. So throughout your day, even throughout your work day, I do this. If I feel like I'm starting to get tired, I'll literally, in plain clothes, in a chair, I'll just sit down and I'll just close my eyes for 10, 15 minutes. And I've gotten really good at training myself to do that. And then I'll wake up and I'm ready to start working again. But don't ignore this basic rest activity rhythm that is within, again, kind of more of a 24-hour period, but it's there. And if you're paying attention, you will feel that. Now let's move on to maybe more traditional, where we can talk a little bit more about cycling and training programs. Let's talk about now the before that, let's talk about the circadian rhythm. Okay, so this one's important. Okay, so I'm gonna back up and talk circadian rhythm. This one deals kind of largely with sleep. So if you think about this, as human beings, we're supposed to be awake when the sun is out. We're supposed to be sleeping when the sun is not out. So again, that's circadian rhythm. This is why a good coach should be on to you about sleep habits. Are you sleeping enough? Are you getting enough rest? And are you doing that at the right time? Because if you're getting sleep, but you're getting it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock in the afternoon, and those are your 6 hours that you're telling your coach that you're getting, well, that's going against your circadian rhythm, and there's huge ramifications for doing this. That's why there's coyotes all over the place out here in Wichita Falls. If you see a coyote out during the day, those are nocturnal animals, so their circadian rhythm is opposite to ours. If you see that coyote out during the day, a lot of times they tell you be careful because that sucker may have rabies. There's something wrong with it, right? It's not operating within its circadian rhythm, and we look at that animal and say, something's off about that. That's not natural. It's the same with us. Unfortunately, though, many athletes ignore their circadian rhythm and they choose to probably stay up a little bit too late, probably sleep in then a little bit too late because I stayed up late. But Mario, I'm getting my 8 hours, I'm doing so good. But if you're getting them at the wrong time, you're ignoring this circadian rhythm. Kind of one of the asides that I want to add to this is, I know that as a coach, a lot of times I get busy moms and dads or entrepreneurs or whatever that I'm coaching. And a lot of times they say, hey, here's the deal. I have to do my training. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm on the bike by 4. I can ride from 4 to 5:30 and then I hit the ground and then I get to work and then I get going. And here's what I always caution them. And I have a real deep conversation with them and ask some good questions about this, because getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sun's not out, riding at 4 o'clock until 5:30, sun's still not out when you're getting off of your bike, you're going against your circadian rhythm. So although, and I've had to do this in my personal life before, although it can be done, you want to be careful that you're not going against that circadian rhythm so frequently and so often that you actually begin to really suffer in terms of your recovery and in terms of your readiness to work and actually build fitness. Because if you're not, so kind of another aside here, if we are not listening to these rhythms and these patterns that we have, then ultimately what's gonna happen is the training that we're doing, the good nutrition plan that we think we're following, all of that stuff, it's not gonna have the gain and the impact that we want it to have, okay? So that's circadian rhythm. So basic recovery activity rhythm, circadian rhythm. Now we're gonna get into a mesocycle. So now going back to talking a little bit of training and cycling here, this is the one that's typically a week. You guys have seen this before. If you have a coach that puts a plan together for you, there's some kind of rhythm of work and rest, okay? This is the big one though, that ambitious cyclists, goal-driven, motivation cyclists, driven cyclists, maybe a lot of times, unfortunately, cyclists that do not have a coach do not do a good job with their mesocycle. What do I mean by that? It's hard workout, hard ride, kind of a maybe half semi-recovery type day, but then long rides on the weekends that are hard group rides. And now we're looking at that cycle and going, where is the rhythm? Where is the place where we get that parasympathetic nervous system activity to be able to recover and make the gains from the workouts that you did? And so again, this is different for every athlete and for every rider. I wish that I could show you a template that you could follow where it's like Monday's a recovery day, Tuesday's intervals, Wednesday a recovery day, Thursday's intervals, Friday is a recovery day before you hit the group ride on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, if you wanted to follow that, it's probably better safe than sorry because you're working in a lot of recovery there. And, you know, if you're watching this and you don't have a coach or if you're thinking about putting this together for yourself, then that's what I would say. Work in more recovery than you need because chances are before you watch this video, maybe you're not getting enough. So work in more than you need. You'll be better off doing that. But in terms of how this works for the individual athlete, I can't answer that question for all of you generically and say, this is what you should do, because guess what? Overlaid onto those workouts is, what does your work schedule look like? Do your kids have games? Does your wife need you to help her with something? Is work really busy and stressful at that time? Is work a little bit more relaxed? And therefore maybe we can do without that extra recovery day for the week and really kind of press you, and that readiness to work is really there. And so it's complicated. What do your sleep patterns look like? Are you ignoring your circadian rhythm to the point where I'm looking at you and going, we need more recovery days than anything else? Because I mean, you're not recovered. You're tearing yourself down. You're fatigued, and it's not from the training, but it still all counts. Remember, your body doesn't care where the stress and the fatigue comes from. It just understands stress and fatigue, and it understands what it does to your body, and it understands all the chemicals that are flowing through there. I've done a video on that if you guys want to go back and check that out. So it doesn't care where it comes from. It lumps it all together, and you are what you are. And so this mesocycle, this traditional mesocycle, could look different for you here in October versus when you turn the corner and you're in February getting ready to race, versus when it's tax season if you're an accountant, versus when your kids are in sports versus when they're out of season. And so it's complicated. And this is why, you know, a lot of times I say, talk to an athlete, when you get a training plan for me, it's gonna be a custom training plan. I mean, you can look at somebody that lives in your same neighborhood, is the same age as you, and they're not gonna get the same training plan. Why? Because we're taking all of these variables into account. And so the last thing that I wanna go over is I wanna talk about the macro cycle. And the macro cycle is long-term. It's a rhythm that takes place through months and even years. And that's the one that makes you a better athlete from season to season. This is the one where I can tell you, after 25 years of riding my bike, I'm better now than I was even 15 years ago because of this macro cycle at work. And so what we're trying to pay attention to here is we're taking a 5,000-foot view on what does your training look like for the next couple of months? What has it look like? What kind of load have you been under? And then what kind of load can we put you under for the next maybe couple of months? Or do we back you off? Do we need to recover? Where was your baseline for last season? And then is your baseline, can it be better for this season, or do we need to back that off? And so this one is looking ahead to the future, but then also looking at where we are currently and trying to make our best guess and estimate. And I say best guess and estimate, it's not because I don't think I'm a good coach, it's because I'm an honest coach. And I can tell you that a lot of times what we're doing is we're looking at the data and we're making educated, yes, scientific, yes, estimations on fitness and power and ability levels and all that, but they're still estimations. And so kind of the last thing that I want to say about this video is that all of these things, they move and they flex and they waver and they all kind of jump on and they all kind of feed off of each other to make you the athlete that you currently are, and then to use that to try to make you the athlete that you ultimately want to be further on down the road. But it's important that you take all of these phases, all of these rhythms into account, because they're going to allow you to recover better. You will not get stronger if you don't recover. It doesn't matter what kind of workouts you're doing. You're ultimately going to get to the point where your body's just going to throw up its hands and say, I cannot do this anymore. If you override that parasympathetic nervous system, and a lot of people just hit the button and cancel on that, eventually you're going to run into, unfortunately, you're going to run into some serious problems. And I've seen that. And then ultimately, the parasympathetic nervous system is going to come up to you and say, you didn't want to listen to me earlier? Well, now you have no choice but to listen to me. Now we're in a month or 2 months or maybe even an entire season where we can't do very much work because you're not ready to do the work. You're in this ready to recover and you have no choice but to take that path. And so there you have it, recovery. Super important tool. I mean, most of the content that I'm going to put out here is going to be based on, training physiology and workouts and how do we get better and all this kind of stuff. And this video is just as important as those videos, because your ability to recover, your willingness to recover is just as important as any workout that your coach or yourself can provide and give you. So there you have it. All right, folks, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're enjoying the content, we're building up a nice little library here, so we've got some other videos you guys can go and check out. If you think that this will be helpful for somebody else, then go ahead and share, subscribe to the channel yourself, and we'll do it again sometime. Thank y'all so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day.